and welcome to the Coyote Quarter Spring Football Special. I am Jay Elson. South Dakota football has undergone a total makeover since the end of the 2015 season. So with that in mind, let's first recap what was an extremely busy offseason. It all started on November 23rd when the legendary Joe Glenn announced his retirement just 2 days after the Coyotes completed a 5-6 season. 3 weeks later, South Dakota hired Bob Nielsen away from Missouri Valley Football Conference rival Western Illinois, making him the 30th head coach in program history. Nielsen completed his coaching staff by New Year's Day and then hit the recruiting trail. And all that hard work paid off in a big way on February 3rd as South Dakota added a total of 31 student athletes on National Signing Day. From there, the focus turned back to the current crop of Coyotes on March 29th, which marked the start of spring practice. Now, of course, with change comes adjustment, and there was certainly plenty of that for coaches and players alike over the course of the spring season. One of the primary focuses was the team's new offense and everything that comes with it. Any coach will tell you that spring football is important, but for teams like South Dakota, these 15 practices were about as valuable as it gets.
For us, it's really about starting from the basics and building the fundamentals that can be used in your offense and defensive scheme. And so a totally different emphasis from what we'll have next year, but one that as a coaching staff we've been through before and understand what we have to do.
At the top of that list was building relationships. Bob Nielsen and the Coyote coaching staff spent the previous few months getting to know their players. But this spring was especially pivotal because it was the first opportunity for the sides to share the field.
You get hired in December and spend the majority of the first couple months on the road recruiting, and so now to have an opportunity to work with our guys on a daily basis like you can in spring practice is really what coaching's all about. And our guys are working hard, and we certainly feel like we're making progress.
Coach Nielsen's just directing the ship right now. But when he needs to tell you something, you listen and you pick up on what he's saying. So I think everyone's enjoying their position coaches right now and how it's been so far this spring. Kind of a loose group, but they get down to business.
It's very evident that the coaching staff cares about us as people, but also they're going to get us where we need to be able to win football games. It feels like there's a big sense of urgency to get better every day because we're not at where we need to be.
Where they need to be is fast. With Nielsen installing his trademark no-huddle offense, the Coyotes are literally learning on the fly. It's all about tempo.
We did a lot different strength and conditioning this offseason because of that. They're preparing for it. And still, strength and conditioning is still different, during camp and, even during practice. Obviously, you've seen it, how fast it's been going. But I think everyone's gotten in a lot better shape and, we're just moving along now.
I mean, we just got to keep hammering it because it's a big part of our offense, and you can tell when we go live sessions what it does to a defense. It wears you down and gets your hands on your hips and gets you a little tired, so that's what we take advantage of.
In addition to pace of play, the Coyotes were also focused on communication. Nielsen's quick-trigger offense comes with a whole new language, and in order for South Dakota to operate at maximum efficiency, every player on the field has to be fluent. Read, comprehend, and execute in a matter of seconds.
If you're trying to play up-tempo football, you've got to be able to communicate that at a very fast pace. And the first few days that was a struggle. Today in practice, I could see that there was some progress being made, a lot less gross mistakes, and as a result, I felt offensively we were playing more consistently today.
Nielsen admits that consistency is still miles away from where it needs to be come September, but it's a start, and he and the Coyotes firmly believe their productivity will eventually catch up with that pace.
There's starting to be flashes of greatness where you can see that when we're clicking on offense, things are going to go. And we got a lot of dudes that can play football. We got a lot of dudes coming in that can play football in the freshman class too. And once these coaches get us to where we need to be, execution-wise, we're going to be something special.
You sense at times that guys are getting a little bit overloaded, and I think as a staff we've done a good job at that point in backing off and making sure that we gain confidence in those things that we put in before we move forward. And we're not going to get everything in. We understand that. through 15 days of practice, and what we hope is that we've got a basis that we can execute and build from as we move ahead into the summer.
Now, the Coyotes may be learning a new offense, but they're doing it with a pretty experienced group. We'll take a closer look at some of the team's key returners on that side of the ball when we come back.
Coyote Corner on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back. Well, the scheme is completely different. The personnel on offense is not. In fact, the Coyotes had 9 players that started at least one game in 2015 back in the mix this spring. Here's a look at how that breaks down by position. As you might expect, there were a lot of eyes on the quarterbacks. With more than a year of starting experience now under his belt, Ryan Sager carried a little more confidence into the spring. He took a majority of the first-team reps and says he feels good about his personal progress within the offense.
It's probably the number one thing for any of the offensive guys, but especially at quarterback, you got to be comfortable with what you're doing out on the field. It makes everything more easy. So that was my biggest focus this winter. I was meeting with Coach Slaffy on a weekly basis and trying to get these plays down really before spring camp started.
Sager would be the starter if the season began today. But with that said, it was impossible to ignore the performance of redshirt freshman Austin Simmons. The Council Bluffs, Iowa native consistently showed the playmaking ability that made him one of USD's most highly touted recruits of the D1 era. South Dakota went through most of the spring with just 3 available running backs. Trevor Bama participated but was not cleared for contact on his surgically repaired forearm. For him, it was simply about making the most of the reps he got.
I think I've got a good grasp of the offense already, just from meetings and watching practice. Gives me a little chance to evaluate others and see what I can do better. Get to do 7 on an individual. 7 on is probably the most important because it's most complicated as a running back. Like anything inside running team, when we're just running the ball, that's easy stuff as a running back, but pass protection, routes, that's a little more complicated, so I'm glad I'm getting 4 reps at that.
Michael Frederick, who's coming off a strong true freshman season that saw him rush for over 600 yards and 2 touchdowns, has shown no early signs of a sophomore slump. Barring any setbacks, he and Baba should provide the Coyotes with a pretty potent 1-2 punch in the backfield. Personnel was also pretty light at wide receiver. With Riley Donovan recovering from hip and shoulder surgeries, USD was left with just 2 players that have collegiate catches to their credit. Brant Van Rukel was limited himself, but still managed to flash some of the ability that helped him enjoy a breakout sophomore season. He and Donovan should each be full go by the fall. Meanwhile, Shamar Jackson, who was one of 5 true freshmen to compete for the Coyotes in 2015, had one of the strongest springs of anyone on the team. Tight end is shaping up to be a real strength for South Dakota. Aaron Ramsey and Josh Hale combined for 36 catches and 2 touchdowns the past 2 seasons, while Big Drew Potter, a 3-year starter, has made the move from fullback. Potter is best known for his blocking, but with 19 career catches and 4 scores to his credit, he's already proven to be a reliable option in the passing game. Finally, we go to the offensive line. The Coyotes return 4 players with starting experience, although one of them is trying a new position. Niall Banks, who started the past 23 games at left guard, has made the switch to center. Whether or not he'll stay there is up to new offensive line coach Bill O'Boyle.
I always want your more athletic kid at center and a little bit more aggressive kid there. And when I came in, I watched Niall work out and do some things, and we ended up losing our center from last year and didn't have a real returning center. So he was kind of the next guy up, and that's how this group will have to work. We're going to have some guys changing places, so that's just how it's going to be. So we'll see how he progresses there, and if not, then somebody else will step up.
Outside of Banks, junior Ed Kennedy and sophomore Nick Jensen boast the most experience on the O-line. Jensen started all 11 games at left tackle in 2015 and looks to be the only guy that's locked into place.
Kids are working hard this spring for me and doing a great job up front and getting used to my terminology and getting used to playing next to different people. And but it's coming along. We made some pretty good improvement over the 14 practices, so I'm pretty happy where we're at now. But of course, we've got a long way to go.
Several guys are heading into the summer off strong individual showings in the spring. Here's a look at the offensive guys the coaching staff felt showed the most improvement. We already mentioned Austin Simmons at quarterback and Mike Frederick at running back. Corey Kilgore also impressed, showing some toughness out of the backfield. At wideout, it's a couple of sophomores, Shamar Jackson and Takari Carpenter. Josh Hale had an outstanding spring and might be the team's best all-around tight end. And finally, Stetson Daigle earned high praise for his performance on the offensive line. Daigle's penciled in for the time being as the team's starter at left guard. Well, South Dakota lost some big-time players on defense. We're going to take a look at some of the guys that are hoping to fill their shoes after this.
Coyote Corner on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. While the offense has most of its key contributors back from last season, the Coyote defense will have some pretty sizable holes to fill. For more on that, here's Alex Heiner.
There's no denying that South Dakota's defense was vastly improved last season. The switch to a 4-3 scheme saw the Yotes move up the Missouri Valley standings in every defensive statistical category, from points and yards allowed to sacks and turnovers forced. A big reason for that success, the play of 7 starters now no longer in the fold after graduation or through transfer. Despite those personnel losses, there's still plenty of reason for optimism on the defensive side of the ball. New defensive coordinators Tyler Yelk and Atiba Bradley have kept the base 4-3 system that worked so well last season, and they've added a little more aggression to the Yotes mentality on D.
We want to get after the football. We want to when we pursue, we want to fly to the ball. When we get there, we want to get the ball out. We have got to get the ball back to our offense. If there's anything, when the film gets turned on, you better see us running.
With new terminology and a new style of play in place, there's a learning curve involved.
Like anything else, we'll take 2 steps forward, and then we might take a baby step back, and then the next day we take another 2 steps forward. And so as long as we continue to improve, we're going to be just fine.
Through the 14 practices that we've had, you see the progress of the players, and that's really encouraging. You know, it's really exciting to see players starting to get a hang of it. You know, I'm starting to get a hang of it, you know, and you can start just reacting and playing ball, and that's when we're at our best.
Senior John Wessel is the lone returning starter in the linebacking core after finishing 3rd on the team in tackles last season. A former all-conference pick, Wessel will be leaned on heavily to get a relatively inexperienced group up to speed.
We're getting the hang of communicating with each other better. You know, it was a little hard with a new scheme. Sometimes you don't know what to say. But, you know, as linebackers, you have to definitely communicate with each other, and we're really getting the hang of that better, talking to each other and getting each other on the same page.
Senior Jet Moreland is set to rejoin Wessel at linebacker after a season at safety, while fellow senior Devin O'Farrell and up-and-coming underclassmen Jim Latrenta and Alex Coker have also impressed at the position this spring. Defensive line might be the biggest question mark heading into the season. Senior starters Colin Mertlick and Sean Breedel return, as do 2015 contributors Jake Lair and John Mogg, but the group behind them has little to no playing experience.
We've really kind of brought, 4 or 5 guys along that have, really been a surprise. We're trying to make it so our guys can play fast and, get after the football.
Cornerback is also a bit of an unknown quantity. Junior Adam Harris returns after starting 5 games last season, while the rest of the group is talented but light on experience. The opposite is true at safety, where both starters from last year return in seniors Tyson Graham and Jacob Warner. Last year, the two were 2nd and 4th respectively on the team in tackles and combined for 7 interceptions. And Warner expects more of the same this year in a new scheme.
Me and Tyson have always played well together. And this new system we got, it's a lot more zone, it's a lot less playing man-to-man where, you can kind of get exposed. So I feel like we're going to do really well together.
Finally, with a lot of new faces on defense, the importance of a familiar one on special teams can't be overstated, as 2-time all-conference pick Miles Bergner is back to handle the kicking and punting duties for a 4th season.
Now that defense got one last chance to measure its progress against that of the offense during last month's spring game. Find out which side won the bragging rights when we come back.
Coyote Corner on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Dakota Land Honda.
After nearly a month of practices, South Dakota put its progress to the test with the annual Red-White Spring Game on Saturday, April 23rd. Here's a look at some of the highlights. Plenty of intrigue involved with this year's matchup, which featured a modified scoring system that awarded points on every play. Ryan Sager and the offense got things going early. In fact, the first possession of the game, Sager caps the drive with a 6-yard touchdown strike to tight end Josh Hale. Next possession, Yotes go to the ground. Mike Frederick, showing off some of that speed we saw last season, beats the D to the pylon for a 22-yard score. The defense starts to assert itself from there. They'd hold the offense in check over the next 4 possessions, a stretch that was highlighted by this acrobatic interception from Isaac Armistead. The white team wouldn't stay silent for long. Austin Simmons in at quarterback, and he takes advantage of a slip in the secondary, connects with Takari Carpenter on a 53-yard scoring strike. That would prove to be the day's longest play from scrimmage. Later, how about this touchdown run from Corey Kilgore? All power to the house. That play covered 11 yards. With the score tied, Kilgore and the offense in line to get the win after driving inside the 5 of the game's final possession. But the guys in red had different plans. They stuff them on 4 straight plays, and that was enough to give the defense the victory, 68-65. Good numbers from Sager and Simmons, with both throwing for a touchdown and completing at least 58% of their passes. Jim LaTrenta led the defense with 5 tackles on the afternoon, while Sean Brito recorded 2.5 tackles for loss. All in all, it was a solid finish to what was a productive spring in the eyes of South Dakota's head coach, Bob Nielsen.
We definitely feel like we've made progress, and that's what you want to come away from the spring game saying, that you've made progress. We've gotten comfortable in what we're doing offensively and defensively. Certainly feel like we've got a long ways to go, but ready to move forward here both during the summer and obviously as we head into fall camp in August.
With the spring season now complete, it's time to start looking toward the fall. Argus Leader Media's Mick Gary is going to help us sift through some of the off-season storylines after this.
Coyote Corner on Midcoast Sports Network is presented by Dakota Land Honda.
Well, the spring season is in the books, which means it's time to start focusing on the fall and the 2016 football season. Here to help us with that is Mick Gary, who covers the Coyotes for Argus Leader Media. Mick, several storylines that we're going to be keeping an eye on when South Dakota gets back on the field in early August. The first of which, of course, is that new no-huddle offense. It's pretty clear they're not where they want to be with it just yet, but when you consider the personnel that they've got in place, what kind of impact could this thing have?
Well, number one, I think that fans are naturally inclined to wonder what's going to happen next, what's going to happen with the new coaching staff, and right away they're going to see that. It's a no-huddle offense. When talking to the guys after the spring game, it's obvious is getting up to the line of scrimmage, getting that next playoff is going to be a huge point of emphasis with the coaching staff and the players. And that, they were saying, well, we got it going now, but we're going to get faster at it. We're going to get faster at it, and that is going to be the point of that offense. At times in games, you're going to have to throttle back on it a little bit to give your defense a little bit of a break. But that's a definite part of the season coming up that people are going to be able to pay attention to and graph the progress on it pretty clearly.
It's something that you have to develop a pretty quick appreciation for as you watch, because there's so many moving parts going into play here for that thing to work in sync. A lot has to go well, but when it does go well, it's pretty fun, I think. Well, one thing we don't know for sure is who's going to be running that offense. Ryan Sager, of course, is the incumbent. Austin Simmons looks like he has the potential to be a pretty special player, and now suddenly there's a third guy in the mix with Minnesota transfer Chris Streveler announcing his commitment to the program late last week. How big of a battle are you expecting at the position come fall?
It's hard to say. I think you need the insight of the coaches on that a little bit, and Ryan Sager did nothing to be unseated. And last year, there were games where the offense struggled, but overall, I think that definitely was a marked improvement last year offensively. That said, with Simmons being a very talented kid, came into the program with a lot of qualifications there and anticipation. And then you add Streveler into it, obviously an athlete, big kid, can run very fast, run well. Didn't prove himself as a passer at Minnesota, and I guess that would be the question mark on him. And if he comes in and decides or can run that offense with some level of comfort, throw the ball a little bit. You could definitely envision him as being a serious candidate for the job too.
Sure. Defensively, the Coyotes are going to have to find some playmakers. They lost a ton of production on that side of the football, particularly when it comes to the pass rush. We're talking about guys that accounted for 16 of last year's 21 sacks. Van Ginkel, Lage, Iddings, Jacobs, all of them are gone. So who, if anyone, do you think has the potential to step up and help fill that void?
I think Sean Breedle was a guy that was emerging last year as one of those people who has the potential to make the impact we're talking about here. Colin Mertlick over on the end, I think that it would be his turn to step up, and certainly he's shown signs, glimpses in spring ball too of being a real solid player. Beyond that, there's a lot of question marks there. You had, with Iddings and Jacob and Lage, you had guys who were basically starters from the moment that they were activated. And so those are big holes to fill, and a lot of experience there that went away with those guys. So there's depth issues there, and certainly that impact-type player is going to have to emerge yet from that unit.
All right, good stuff. Thanks, Mick. Appreciate your time. Well, South Dakota will take its first steps toward answering some of those questions when they return for fall camp. The Coyotes are scheduled to report on Wednesday, August 3rd, with practice set to start the following day. That'll take them all the way up to the 2016 season opener, which is slated for Saturday, September 3rd at New Mexico. All right, that is our time. Our thanks again to Mr. Mick Gary. For Alex Heinert, I'm Jay Elson. Thanks for watching.